Rebecca Lopez. How are you?
I am doing great. Blessed.
Blessed. That's a good word. Well, we just want you to know that we are so grateful that you are here with us on Transitions, and just want to start out finding out a little bit about what's going on with you, like what's going on in your life today. I know you're a reporter, so tell me what's happening with you right now.
Well, you know, it's interesting where I'm at in my career.
Yeah.
Because I have been in Dallas now since 1998, and so I'm really, I think, next to Clarice Tinsley, the longest tenured journalist, female journalist in Dallas.
Wow.
And minority. And so I've been here for a bit, and so what's happening right now is a lot of stories are coming my way. I just recently broke the big story at the Dallas Police Department, the shooting. I tweeted that out, my sources calling me, and so it's just interesting where my career is going right now. It's really busy and a lot of really big breaking news stories that are coming my way.
And how has that changed for women? Like, being that you started a while back and now, what's happened with that, with the role of a woman in the news
You know, it's interesting because I remember the first time when I decided to cover the Dallas Police Department, people said, "Oh, you are not a woman. You're never going to get any sources. They only it's a good old boys club. They're not going to talk to you." But it's been the total opposite.
Wow.
In fact, they are very open, and I've got a lot of really great sources. So I think that we've, as journalists, as female journalists, we've definitely come a long way. And now you see so many people of color, different and females on the air, and it's really interesting to watch just the young girls coming up and how dynamic they are, and much further advanced than we are. But that's just because of the changing times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being that you are in the world, finding out all these different stories, how does that affect your daily life?
It can be troublesome sometimes. I recently asked for prayer because I'd been covering a lot of really heavy stories. I had just covered the story about this little girl that was pregnant, and they beat this baby out of her and it was horrific stuff. So sometimes on a daily basis, I see a lot of tragedy, and so I have to pray about it because it is difficult sometimes.
And so how do you leave that at work when you're home with your family?
I think just really honestly, I pray on my way home. I always put on gospel music or I put on positive music so that I'm in a different space when I get there. And I've learned a lot like police officers and doctors, you learn to detach yourself from some of that tragedy, because it would eat you up if you take that home every single day.
So I heard you talking about gospel music. So how does gospel music play a role in your day-to-day, and what do you serve? Well,
when I am down or there's something that's really stressing me out or I feel anxiety, I put on Tamala Man, or I'll put on some Kirk Franklin, or I'll put on some amazing music. And I also like Chris Tomlin and just other Christian music as well. And it just soothes me. It puts me back into a place of peace, because there's so much turmoil in the news business swirling around me. And so getting to play that music, and for me, is just a soothing factor in my life.
So if you had to choose a story that you could talk about or you'd like to expose, what would that look like for you?
Well, for me, I got into this business because I wanted to be a voice for the voiceless. And so that's what I strive to do every day. And every day when I cover news, it is something tragic. Sometimes I meet people on their worst days. I don't want to just cover crime so people say, "Oh, there's the gratuitous crime story of the day." I hope that even in my writing and what comes across on the air, that there's some sort of redeeming quality to my story, that somehow you will still feel, even though it may be tragic, you will feel for the people in the story, and that you will get something out of it for your life. I mean, sometimes that you can't do it, but that's what I strive to do, to try to put a positive spin, even if it's a negative story.
Oh, wow. I think
that's
so
hard.
Awesome.
It's hard sometimes.
Now, you have a son.
I do, Jacob. That's the light of my life.
That's how old is Jacob?
Jacob's 13.
Oh my goodness.
And it's amazing because he's getting to see so many things through my career. He gets exposed to, all kinds of people and places. He's been to the World Series. He's been to different events. He went to Lake Tahoe with, Tim Brown and Cherise and their family. And so he gets to see and meet all these incredible people.
So how does he feel having his mom as a celebrity, so to speak?
Well, I was thinking at one point, I thought, I might change. He's like, "No, you have to wait till I get out of high school because what do we mean we don't get VIP passes?" I think the most telling thing was for his birthday party, he wanted to put up a VIP tent because they
my
were having
goodness.
camping inside the house.
Yes.
He's like, I need a VIP tent. I'm like, you cannot put up a VIP tent for your friends at a birthday party. No.
He's embracing
He
this
loves
world,
it.
so
Oh
to
yeah,
speak.
yeah. Oh, he's hilarious. If you look at his Instagram, he's got this a saying. I don't even know where it got. I was shocked when I looked at it. It said, "Get rich or die trying." That's Jacob's motto. Now I'm like, oh my God, creative.
I love that. That is so awesome. And so, do you ever feel like there's a quiet time in your life where you're maybe missing some drama now that you are surrounded by it some of the times, like with work and stuff? You know, sometimes you can feel like, oh, it's gotten a little too quiet. What's going on? I need to check and see what's happening. Do you ever have those moments where you feel like there's a withdrawal because there may be some peaceful times where you don't get as much news? Or
Oh yeah. I mean, yesterday was one of those days. I mean, here I was this whole week just caught up in the whole Dallas police shooting, and then before that was the McKinney case, and then yesterday I'm sitting in the newsroom and there's really nothing to do. I'm like, okay, what's going on? It was so quiet. yeah. I was searching for stories. Every day it's just different. Yeah.
And so when you say it gets quiet too, in your quiet time, what do you like to do?
In my in my quiet time at work, there's always research to be done and things that you have to look up, and you're still always searching for that next story, that next thing that you want to expose. And so there's a lot of that. Even on the downtime, there is downtime, but there's not really downtime. You're always working, even at home, unfortunately, because when you're a police reporter, you're working 24/7. I mean, that story that came through on Friday, somebody texted me at 12:30 saying Dallas Police Headquarters has just been shot up.
Wow.
What? So there's very little downtime really in my career when it comes to. I mean, you're always on. You always have to be at your phone, and that can be hard on relationships. It can be hard on families. It's a sacrifice. It's a real sacrifice.
So being hard on relationships, is that something that you would like? Do you look forward to having a relationship? Are you in a relationship?
I do look forward to being in a relationship. I've recently met someone, but I wouldn't call it a relationship. Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to be alone. And I think that God made us to be with someone. I just have not found the right person yet, but it's, I guess, in God's timing.
Right.
So I wait patiently and pray a lot about it. Yeah, because, you want somebody to come home to and talk to, and it's a very stressful job sometimes, and so you want somebody just to relax with and that's going to be there to soothe you when times are rough. I mean, the day that I covered the story of the little baby, the girl that I was just telling you about, she was 14 years old, and they decided that they didn't want her to have this baby, so they beat her until she miscarried.
Oh, wow.
And then they tried to get rid of the remains of this baby. That day, I wanted to just come home and have somebody hold me. It was one of those days when you just want to be held.
Wow.
But there was no one there, so I put on my gospel music and I prayed.
Wow.
I got on my knees that day. I probably prayed for about an hour. Just on my knees.
Wow.
But I learned that from you.
Wow.
I learned that from you and my spiritual mentors. You guys are the ones that taught me that when times get rough to pray. And I've really learned to walk a better path with God than I used to.
Wow.
But it took role models like you and others to get me to that point.
Wow.
Because you need those women around you that will enrich your life.
That is such a blessing. And you talking about that path, like what were some of the things that you've had to go through to get you to this place? Like, what was your place of brokenness?
Well, I've started speaking more publicly about it. I didn't for a long time, but I was sexually abused as a child.
Okay.
And you don't realize that impacts everything about who you are. You get low self-esteem, you don't feel good about yourself, and so you make bad choices. Now, I don't use it as an excuse anymore because I realize that we still have choices. And you can, so I don't use it as an excuse that I acted badly or had bad behavior, but I do see now how it impacted my self-esteem and why I was making the choices that I was making. And I was at a really place of brokenness probably about 4 years ago. And I met you around that time. And I would call you guys and ask you to pray for me. And I remember hearing Bishop T.D. Jakes preach. Somebody invited me to the Potter's house, and the moment that I heard him speak, I felt like he was speaking to me directly, because he speaks to a lot of the broken people.
Yeah.
He ministers to the broken hearted. And so I ran to the altar and rededicated my life. And since then, I mean, I'm not saying that it's always been smooth, because I've called you at times going, oh my God, another relationship failed. But I have found that I can deal with it better. And there's a sense of peace in how I deal with even things that are very difficult in my life.
Yeah.
And there's something about being at that place where no matter what happens, you really do know that God is guiding your path. So I don't stress out like I used to. There's just I'm at a real great place in my life right now.
That is so beautiful. And what I heard you say was just having sisterhood and having a support team. That was one of the things that helped you get through your process. So Rebecca, I remember you telling me that you were from Odessa.
I am from Odessa, Texas, home of the Permian Panthers. Go Mojo.
So tell me a little bit about that upbringing. What was that like?
It's a small town, so football is king in West Texas. Okay. And so there were a lot of Friday nights and out at the football games. And so a lot of positive things from that, because your friends are close and they're again like family. Your friends are, and so it was a lot of fun growing up in Odessa. But at the same time, I didn't want to stay in Odessa the rest, because my mother used to have these Harlequin romance novels, and I used to read those novels, and I used to see the heroines in those novels. Believe it or not, that's actually one of the things that inspired me to want to become a journalist, because I wanted to see the world. It was going to be that or a flight attendant, because I thought it was so glamorous. And you read these books about these women that would travel and do these fun things, and that's how I picked my mentors, I guess, really, was through those novels.
But isn't that amazing how books really do, the things that we read, they influence some of the direction and the roads that we take even in life, because like you said, you wanted to travel the world because of that. I think that's amazing. I've had the chance to meet your mother.
Yes.
So what did she leave you with? Like, what were the words that she used to encourage you growing up and what you should do?
Well, my mother was very strong-willed. My mom was a teen. She was pregnant when she was a teen, so she was a teen mom, and she didn't want me to follow in those same footsteps. And so she always encouraged me, finish school, get an education, don't do what I did. Now she dropped out of school, out of high school, but went back later and got her college degree. And got her high school degree, her GED, and then went back and got a master's even.
Wow.
And ended up being an assistant principal. So what I learned from her was education, and always, just striving for what you want in life. And she instilled that in me, to go out and search for your dreams and to stay focused. And my career, I've always remained focused, and that is where I got that from my mother.
Wow. Well, that's a beautiful thing. So you told us about your mother. Tell us about your father.
Well, I was legally adopted by my stepdad.
Oh, wow.
And he's an amazing man. He's a hairstylist, but he's the guy that always inspired me to do things that maybe I was afraid to do, to step out, and because he's a little entrepreneur, and he loves to make sure that you're doing things that are different in your life, and that you're trying new things, and that you're always exploring things. And so that's what he taught me. He's like, if you want to be a reporter, go be a reporter. Nothing's going to stop you. And he used to always tell me, be careful who you hang out with. He used to have this saying, dime con quien andas y te digo quién eres. Yeah, exactly. Tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. So he was telling me to be very careful about who I chose to be around. And those were really great words of wisdom, because I always hung out, even in high school, with people that were career-oriented, that wanted to go to college. I didn't hang out with the people that were the troublemakers. My sister did now. Okay. My sister was the one that stole the family car. She's going to get mad at me for telling that. And I was the one that always stayed focused. And it's interesting how our lives have kind of mirrored that even to this day, on the path that you choose.
So you just have one sibling?
I have one sister, yes.
And where is she now?
She's still in Odessa.
Okay. Well, that's good. Well, she has you're the oldest?
I'm the youngest.
Oh, you're the youngest. Okay. So, all right.
Yeah.
Well,
But growing up in Odessa is interesting because while it was fun and you had the high school football and all of that, you also had this kind of racial tension. So I remember when I grew up in an almost all white school.
okay.
And the kids would pick on me. They would call me spick and wetback, and there was a lot. And guys, parents didn't want them to date me because I was different. So I wouldn't speak Spanish. I was embarrassed to be Latino almost because you wanted to just sort of blend in and not have people call you names. And it wasn't until later on in life that I realized, how important it was to embrace your culture. And so now, obviously, I talk to young Latino kids about, not letting those sort of distractions get to them because it's hard. There was a teacher by the name of Mr. Langford, and one day he did something that was so profound in my life. He too was very instrumental in why I wanted to be successful. He would get mad because I wasn't good at math.
Okay.
And he had this question time. And he'd say, you can't ask questions after this particular time. But I got stuck on a problem. And so I raised my hand. I said, I'm stuck on this problem. And he went over to my desk and screamed at me, told me that I was dumb, that I was never going to make it, that I couldn't follow the rules, that I had a bad attitude. And then he kicked my foot. And I was embarrassed because, and when I get angry, I cry. So I was crying in the classroom, and it was so humiliating. He says, you need to change your attitude and follow rules, or you're never going to make anything out of yourself in life. And you probably never will. Those words still ring in my head. So when I graduated college, I made a copy of my degree and I sent it to Mr. Langford.
Wow.
I sure did.
Is Mr. Langford still there?
No, he's gone. Yeah, and he's been gone for a long time. But those words were so motivational for me because I thought I'm going to prove him wrong, and that one incident still sticks with me today because I'm like, I will never let somebody tell me I can't do something. I'm going to do it anyway. Wow. And
that
it was
just
Mr. Langford.
The power of the mind, because you made up in your mind that you were going to achieve greatness, as opposed to receiving what he said and let him speak those negative things over you, and receiving that, you spoke, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you and everybody else that I can. I love that.
Yeah,
someone can, wrap their mind around the positive.
Yeah, because some people will listen to those harsh words and they'll take them to heart, and then they'll live with that stigma. But again, my mother, I told my mom, I remember, she went up to that school board, Mr. I could hear her yelling across the school grounds. I'm like, oh, the Latina mom's here now. And she was like yelling at Mr. Langford, you don't tell my daughter she can't. That was even more embarrassing. When mom came up there, yeah. But, it's still to this day, I remember his words, but they cut deep, but it also inspired me. Yeah.
So again, you chose to speak to the greatness as opposed to what he said.
Yeah.
That's such a blessing.
And I think it's important that I always tell my son, I encourage him, because I think that so many parents don't take time to spend with their children and to listen to them and to tell them, that they can be great. I, every day, try to expose my son to something. Yeah. And you see, I take him on trips. He met President Obama recently because I think it's important. I've taken him to the Bush Library as well because I want him to be exposed to everything so that he can be a great man, a well-rounded man. Yeah. And as our generation teaches the younger generation, as we become more tolerant, my hope is that, and I don't know that we'll ever achieve it because there's just some evil people that will always stay where they are, but I pray that people of his generation will not see color, that will not see race, that will not see hatred because people are different culturally. Yeah. And so I take him, I've even taken him to a mosque, I've taken him to an ashram just because I want him to see that there's different cultures and I want him to be tolerant. Now you don't have to embrace their beliefs, but you should embrace the people and not feel hate towards people because they believe differently than you. Oh. And so I try to instill that in him, and because growing up in Odessa, there were a lot of intolerant people, and I do not want my son to be that way. Exactly. Yeah. So, and he goes to a school that has a very diverse group of kids, and I love that.
Wow, I love that. Just hearing that you've made sure you've exposed him to so many wonderful things. And like you said, they're always better off for it, because once you can actually see and experience some things, you can make a wiser decision on what you want to do.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? You've been exposed and educated on different areas of life where you can now say, this is what I want to do. So I think I applaud you for that, just being a mom and being that. Now, you are a single parent.
Right.
And you've been that for how long?
Gosh, I've been divorced now like 6 years. Now, my ex-husband and I are very amicable, so he is very instrumental in his life as well. So I think it's important to have a male figure as well.
Yes.
I mean, because you're a single mom too. I am fortunate that he is there, and he is still instills some of the things that he needs from a man's perspective.
Correct.
And I do applaud everything that single moms do, but I am fortunate that he's there as well.
Right. And I do know, I'm not a single parent anymore, but when I was, it is hard. It's a lot that you have to do. So to surround, especially having a son, to surround your son with other men that you're proud of and you respect, that's a wonderful thing, because you really would like for them to encourage the young man and then do those things that you can't.
Well, exactly, and that's one of the reasons I love him being around Tim Brown and Sharice Brown, because Tim, who just wrote the book, The Making of a Man, he mentors Jacob, and he talks to him, and being around his kids that are also such good kids and sweet-spirited children, I think that's, for me, my whole, after we leave this earth, and we're not going to take anything with us, all we can leave is our legacy. All we have is our legacy and our children, and the legacy that we leave behind and what we've done for others, and that's it. That's all that's left behind when we go. That's what people are going to remember about you. And so for me, my legacy is I want people to see, wow, what a great, young, honorable man that woman helped raise, and look at the great things that he has done for mankind. That is my goal at the end of the day, whenever I leave this earth, that leave him and my legacy through him.
I love that word, legacy.
Yeah.
Just the mindset of making sure you're leaving what I call greatness behind, the things that you have sowed into, and then others are able to see the benefit of, your commitment and your sacrifice and your love and your support for your son. I believe that's absolutely beautiful.
Absolutely, and I think that they will change the world, and I do believe that. And I always listen to Martin Luther King's words so ring true. I wish that we could all be judged by the content of our character, and not the color of our skin. And I believe that, and I want him to know that. And I love it because his first little girlfriend was African American.
Wow.
And I love that about the fact that he's able to see past. He doesn't see race at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Right.
And I hope that maybe more people will raise their children in that way. I'm not saying I'm doing it perfectly.
I understand.
But I do say that we have to teach our children to be tolerant.
You're right. And I always say those things are things that need to be communicated. You cannot assume that the child is getting that if you're not speaking those things around him and letting him know that, or he or she know that there are different cultures and there are different races around you, but you treat everyone equally. You don't see them as separate or different. The skin color may be different, but that's it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And then Tim's book, the Making of a Man, he tells you how to raise your children, or at least to follow his footprint.
Right.
Because here's a man that has won the Heisman Trophy and going into the NFL Hall of Fame, but he's always put God first and carried himself with honor. And so men like that my son can emulate, for me, is important.
Yes.
And that's why, like you, I try to expose him to great men that will be respectful to women. In fact, he goes to so many events with me, and you've seen him, and there's a lot of women around, and he's the kid that will run and open the door. In fact, this mom waited for me the other day after school. She told me about an incident where they were having trouble because it was pouring rain, and they were trying to get some tents down at a track meet, and this mom is over there struggling. All the other kids are running around playing in the puddle, and then Jacob turns around and sees this mom struggling. He runs over there. He's like, let me help you, let me help you. She's like, oh, I told my daughter, that's the kind of young man that you need to marry. And so she went and got him some little gift cards, which she says there's so few kids that will do that, that will take the time to see and do the right thing. You know, so many of us don't teach our children to do those, still be those, do those respectful things for one another, open the doors and speak politely to people, that kind of thing. That's important, the old fashioned.
I love that you've trained him to be that. So we just are so grateful that you have been here with us. And do you want to share one last thought with us before we go?
That is so important, to surround yourself with good people that pour into your life, that enrich your life. And I used to hang out with a lot of negative people. And when you hang out in that place, you stay in that place. And so when I met people like you and some of my other friends that are such incredible role models, you just feel like you have a family, y'all are like family to me, like sisters.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful thing to have really great friends that will uplift you every day and pray for you.
Wow, what a beautiful thing. We're just so proud of you and so excited about the mother that you are, the friend that you are, the prayer warrior that you are, the reporter that you are, all those wonderful things. Well, we want to thank Rebecca Lopez for joining us today. And there's just so much going on in the world. And my thought process is this: when you can have someone that you can pray with, when you can have someone that you can grow with, when you can rely on friends and people that will literally stop and pray for you, that thing right there will change your life. It can make or break you not having that, because again, when you're growing in the Lord and when you need someone to fall on, friends are the best thing. When when you're growing and when you're trying to seek after wise counsel, just being able to have someone that you can call on. So we do suggest that you stay connected with other friends, get connected to a church, find a spiritual counselor that you can speak with, and get in that word. And again, we want to thank Rebecca Lopez for joining us today. She's been our wonderful friend, a wonderful spiritual guidance in my life as well. So thank you for joining us here at Transitions.